Today's session is on loops and some function range. So let's begin. Let me share my screen. Let's start with some pie chart. Okay, so to begin with, we're going to study one function before we start studying loops, and that is of range. That is range. Range function. Okay. So if you have to create a number list from a specific number to another number, for example, from 0 to 9, we can simply create it by using this function, which is range. And if you have to, if for example, if I write range 10, so what does this mean? It means that it counts all the numbers from 0 to 9. So 10th number is actually the wall where is actually a number before which the wall is created, the concept that we studied before. Okay, let me write a format and then you would know. Okay, so range, start, last, and then gap. So in the first example, you could see in this example, okay, in this, you can see that there are 3 commas in this one function, but I just put 1 digit in this. So what does this mean? So if I don't put the first one, if I just put only 1 digit, it means that the first one is not there, and the last one is not there, but the middle one is there. Okay? So if you are starting from 0, and this was from range of from 0 to 9. Okay? So if you're starting from 0, you don't have to write the start thing for this function, but you have to end it at some place, and for that end I used 10. It basically happens is that 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10. But the wall is created over here, so the 10 doesn't count, but it prints from 0 to 9. We can print it as well. And we would see, and then I can also put some description over here, range, and then we could print it out. Wait a minute. Oh yes, I forgot the comma. Okay, 0 to 10. Why isn't printing it? Acha. We would see that in loops. It would. Acha. So, but what if I don't want to start from 0? I could write the first digit. For example, I have to write it from 5 to 9, so that could be 5, 9. Okay? And what about the gap? So the gap is, for example, here it would print from 0 to 9 with a gap of 1, which is at default. So if I want to put a command to have a specific gap, it will only have the gap of 1. So for example, I want to print even numbers. So how would I print even numbers from 0 to 9? All I can do is I can say range with a small r, and I can say I don't have to write 0. I will write 10. Then I would say, and if I have to add 10, then I would write 11 over here. Okay? And then I would say that the gap of 2. So it would be 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. And the 10 is not included because it's not included in the range. We would understand this concept more when we will be studying the loops. Okay, so you could also use some operation with ranges that is of sum. And list, if you want to create a list of numbers that you don't want to write, you can simply make a range. Okay, so you can, for example, let's see this. This should happen. There's range of sum, range from 0 to 9. Let's write 10, and I'm save it, and then print x. Yes, 45. That is a sum of 9, 0 to 9, which I believe is 45. 3, 6, 10, 15, 21, 28, 36, and then yes, 45. So it printed it. And similarly, we could create a list by writing li is equals to list brackets. I want to create it from, again, anything, even numbers list. So from 0 to 10, and that I could put 11 and with a gap of 2. So it should print a list of numbers, of even numbers from 0 to 10. And that is li. Let's see. Oh, why is it an empty list? Why didn't I print it out? Oh, let's put 2 here, and then this, and then let's try to print li. Yes, we have it. So I had to specify the first letter. It thought that it's starting from 11 and ending at 2, which didn't make sense. So you could do this. Okay, perfect. So range was a very small concept that we had to study before studying loops. Now we will move towards our more important topic of today, which is loops. So there are 3 types of loops in Python. Okay, let's move forward. Okay, let's start loops. So there are 3 types of loops, and that is, the first one is for loops. The second one is while loops, and the third one is do while loops. For today's session, we will be focusing on for loops. We will be building logic, we will be building loops, and yes. So let's start with the first kind of loops, which is for loops. Right, perfect. Do we have questions from ranges? Nope, good. Okay, let's start with for loops. Okay, so before that, I would like to share an image so that we know. I hope you could see the screen. Yes. Acha. So we would first build the logic, and then we would start writing the code for it. Okay, so what happens is that while loops are very, very, very important in coding. So what we studied before were all the elements that we would be using for in the loops while writing logical operations, logical statements. So loops and if statements are the essence of coding, I would say. So for that, it is really important to understand these 2 concepts of if conditions and loops. So you know, how intelligence comes into computer or any electronic device is when they can make a decision, right? So a decision is that, should I do something? If something happens, should the consequential thing should happen or not? Okay, the computer has to make a decision. If I say only print, there's a range of numbers from 0 to 10, and I say only print 2, right? So there's a for loop for that, or there's a condition for that. And similarly, we would see that in loops. For loops in Python, it's usually different from for loops in other coding languages such as C++. So you would see a slightly a different concept over there. Okay, let's see what does this this means. Okay, so for example, it says acha, for I, what does this basically means? Acha, we'll see. For I in this list, print I. Acha, so I here could be in any variable. It could be friends, food, anything. It's a variable. This I is a variable, and the variable which comes after for is an iteration variable. You know, we if some of us have studied mathematics, so we would know what iteration means. Iteration means that if something happens, it goes back and there's a loop. It goes in a loop, and if the statement or the condition still meets, then or it defines, it still goes on happening. And if when the task is done, it is completed, it comes out of the system. Okay? So I is the iteration variable. It begins from the first letter and then it moves to the last letter. You don't have to command it to move. It knows that it will move. So it is called an iteration variable. For any variable, the iteration variable in, then there is a sequence, and it can be a list, all the sequence that we have studied. We have studied strings, we have studied list, we have studied tuples, we have studied dictionaries. So that's where we are going to use them. And a sequence, and then print I. So what does it do? Okay, let me bring the chart over here. Okay, so what does it do? It says, okay, I in this list. So I is basically the index. Okay, so it will always begin from 0. You don't have to tell कि मेरी list में there are only 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It is still only 4th index. The loop already knows. Okay, it has to run till the 4th index or till the 5th value. Okay, so what happens is it comes from the first index I, and then it moves I. So it prints I. So this done is that is the loop completed. So the loop is not completed. Okay. I is updated, but the previous I is printed as we have commanded it over here. And then it goes back in the loop and then says, is the loop done? Is the index completed? So, you know, over here, so it was 1. Acha. So it was index 0 over here. Let's write. Yes. Okay. So it was index. Why is it not writing? So forget about it. So it was index 0 over here. Okay. And then it moved. So the index updated itself and it became 1. But the previous index, which we started from here, got printed. And then we moved back. So when we moved back, the index was updated, which now is 4. Okay? Or which is the second value. So it says that is the loop completed? The loop isn't completed. So again, no. Updated, print the last value, and then come again. And then think, is it done? No. When it comes to 1, the 1 gets printed, but when it goes back to done, yes, the list is completed. So it comes out of the loop. It exists, exit the loop. Okay, so the I is 5, the first, and then if we print I, then the I print, it is the 5 is printed, and then I becomes 4, and then 4 is printed, and then this is how the loop works. This is how the for loop works. Do we have a question from this slide? Or should I move forward? Okay, let's move forward. So let's have different examples. Different examples. Let's try different sequences and let's see how do they respond to loops. Okay, so our syntax was for. First, let's create a string. Let's try our string first. Okay, so string s is equals to my name is Zoha. Fine. For, I would say letter. For word in S, so S has to be this. Or I could also put this exactly over here. Then a colon, and then it will press an enter. There will be an automatically an indentation. And this indentation is extremely important, and I would just emphasize it on it more. Just, oh, so it wasn't letter, it was word. It has to be word. It doesn't matter what the name of the variable is, the computer doesn't know. It is for us to, it was for our understanding. So what it is do is that it goes to the first index, M, it comes in the loop, it prints that letter, then it goes back, and there is an automatically, it is at default that after this, there would be a, next line, okay? And then it would go and print Y, and then a space, because space is also a character, then NAME, and then again a space, and then Zoha. So that's how it responds to strings. And similarly, to list, and I would just be doing list, and then we would move forward to other interesting so concepts. Okay, words, for example, if we have this is a list, so that's why I used a square bracket. And let's name animals: cats, dogs, parrot, and then what more we have? Let's name anything, horse. Okay, perfect. And we could also name it animals, make it more descriptive. Acha, for animal in animals, colon, you press enter, there will be an automatic indentation, and then I would like to print animal. And then it printed. That's another way to learn how indexing works differently in strings and list. This is one index, but in list, this whole is the means the first index, the zero index, and this is the zero index. Acha. So one more important thing is that this is for our understanding that this is animal and animals. This could be any value variable, and the Python won't care. This is just an iteration variable. It could be I, and it would give us this and obviously I have to change this as well, and this would give us the same output. So this is for our understanding. That's it. Okay, one more thing. Let's talk about indentation, how these two loops worked outside each other. Is that I could also print loop finished, and then I would enter, and then I would backspace, and then print loop finished. And what if I also put this over here? What difference would this make? Okay, let's see. So when this happened, that I made a string and then I went into a for loop. So for, a letter, an iteration variable in S, which is the each value, it printed. It kept on printing. Then I put a backspace and I came out of the loop. So in other languages, what happens is that if you have to create a loop, you put curly brackets and you tell the coding language ke, whatever is in the bracket, जैसी मर्जी indentation हो, this is a part of the loop and it has to be executed as far as the loop is going, as far as the loop is running. However, in Python, there are no brackets, there are no parentheses. However, indentation plays a huge role. So we would see loops within loops, and you have to take care of indentation. So when I came back, I came outside this indentation. Okay? Always the enter would keep you inside the loop, but if you put backspace, it would take you outside the loop. So when it finished, I put finish loop. Okay? Then to explain this in a better way, let's see over here. When I'm inside the loop, when the first index is printed, cat is printed, I put 1 inside, and I could see that loop finished is still executed because it's still inside the loop. Then dogs loop finished, then parrot loop finished, then horse loop finished, and this last is outside. So it is printed only once. Once the whole of the loop is finished, is completed, is satisfied. Okay? And then the last is completed. So here, that's how you have to take full care of indentation. We would be studying loops within loops tomorrow, and you would know how important that is. Okay, good. So, however, this was our session, but I did collected some very important concepts that we should know when we are studying loops. And you would see that these are pretty long, and we have functions that could, do it in a sentence, but this would be good for you if you're studying other languages, and you would also appreciate the functions that are there. So sometimes your assignments would say don't use the sum function or the max function to find the maximum value within a list, and you have to write a whole for loop for that. So to do such assignments, you need to see this. Okay, so we would see that how to find the largest value, how to find the smallest value, how to count how many values are there. For that, we have length function, or how to take a sum, or how to find an average. We have functions for them, but we could also write loops for them. And exercising this is very important because it helps you with logic. It helps you give an idea, because when the code becomes complex, so ये छोटी-छोटी चीजों से आप practice करके you can write more complex where the functions don't exist. So let's see how can we find the largest value in a list. So let's create a list. List is equals to 22, 5, 12, 3, 1. Okay, perfect. Now let's find a value. Okay, so for that we have to write largest. We'll update our code when we'll see that are we having the output or not. So it's pretty annoying. For I in list, do we have a question? Yes. So basically, in such softwares, if you press enter, there is an automatic length. However, in some other softwares, or even over here, you could see Okay, there are 4 spaces basically. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is at the 4th space, or this is at the indentation, or 1 tab letter, and there's also a tab. So sometimes in some softwares it takes spaces and tabs separately. These are basically null spaces. So null spaces includes an end line, a space, or a tab. Okay. So sometimes the software takes the tab or the space differently. So if you're putting 4 spaces, yes, four spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then in the next line you are putting a tab, you're using the tab, so it would consider it different somehow. So it's better that we put a colon and then the software would handle the indentation. But basically it's 4 spaces and or 1 tab. Acha, let's move forward. So for I in the list, okay, we need to find the largest one. So for that, we would need an if condition as well. If condition. So that if the value, the number, the I, okay, or let's just make it more descriptive. The number has to be greater than the smallest number. Then the previous number, right? So I would say, so how we can do it is that, 45 is greater than 22, good. 45 is greater than 12, okay, pass on. 45 is still greater than 3, pass on. 45 is still greater than 8, good. 45 or 98, 98 is greater. So it is updated. So the largest value is updated. And then we would see over here. So we would update values. For that, to know कि यहाँ पे कौन सी value है, we could create a value. For example, largest so far, or largest so far. So we could put it as the first value. We could put it as -1. However, if we have negative values, or if all the values are negative and -1 is perhaps greater than all of them, so it would be give an error. So what's the best way to start is to just give it the name of the first value. So which is list and then 0, the first index. Okay, so if the number in the iteration is greater than list, largest so far, then what should it do? Then it should update the largest so far. As I said, okay, chalo, let's make it 30. Oh, no. Let's make it 63. Okay? So when it went through 22, it said, acha, 22 is equals to 22. Acha, okay, let's move forward. Then it went to 45. So 45 is now the number, which is the second loop. And it is greater than the largest so far, which was the first index, which is 22. So what should it do? It should update it, right? So if the number is greater than the largest so far, what should we do? We should okay, I'm so sorry. We should update it. So how would we update it? We say largest so far is equal to the number, right? Is equals to the number. And now I'm coming out of this loop. So I'm putting a backspace. Now, what if the next number is not greater? So what should it do? Well, we don't have to cater that to keep the code as small and as neat. Okay? So we updated it. And yes, I would say that that's just enough. And let's print. largest so far, okay, and let's put over here and let's find out 98. Yes, 98 is the greatest. So what happened is that we first declared a variable, and then we gave it the first index value, the value at the first zero index, okay? And we said, okay, let's start from 22. So then we went for num in list, for every index for the iteration variable, okay? So it was 22 at this moment. I said, is it larger than the largest so far value? Is it 22 is greater than 22? No. So it went back to the next number, which was 45. So what happened? Okay, let's even print it. Print largest so far. Okay, perfect. Now let's see. Okay, yes. So was 22 greater than 45? No, 45 was greater. So now largest of our value is 45, right? And at 12, it also, and then 63 became, and then 98 became, let's do it. It's a little confusing. So we declared the largest of R to be 22. Then we went inside the loop. We said for number 22 in list. Okay? If number is greater than largest so far, so number was not greater than largest so far, so it came out of the loop. And there was no printing. There was no printing. So we didn't have 22 over here because nothing was printed. Or we could also print. Print num. Okay. Okay, yes. So it was 22 and we are outside the if statement. So it will be printed even if the if statement is approved, satisfied or not. Okay. So the 22 was printed. Now the another num value came. So let's see if it was 45. Okay. Now it was number was 45 and largest of our value was still 22. So 45 was yes greater than 22. So largest of our value became 22. And then we printed the largest of our value, which was 45. Okay, the largest of our value became 45, and then we printed the largest of our value, which was 45. And then the another 45 is for the number on which we were. Okay. Then we went back to 12. Is 12 greater than 45? Remember, it is updated now to 25. So let me add a comment. Let's say update. Okay, update is now 45. Now, is 12 greater than 45? No, it's not. So it comes out of this if statement, but this is still executed because it is inside the for loop. You can see this line. Okay, it is inside the for loop, but it's not inside the if condition. So if condition is not updated, but this is still printed, which was 12. So we have a 12 over here. Okay. Okay, so it went back to the loop. Now it is 63. Is 63 greater than largest so far? Yes, it is greater than largest so far. So largest so far became 63. And then it is printed 63. And then the second printing of 63 came from this. So when it went outside the loop, it wrote 63 because it will be printed. Okay. So then it went back to the loop because still the list is not completed. So now the number is 8. Is 8 greater than 63? No, it's not. So it is just printed because the if statement is not satisfied, but it will be printed because this is out the if statement. Now we are at 98. So 98 is yes greater than 63. So our update becomes 98. Our largest of our value becomes 98, and it prints 98, and since the number have will be printed, so it will be 98. Then 10. Then 10 is printed, then 10. 10 is 10 greater than 98? No. So we are outside this loop, this if statement, but this is still executed because it is the part of the loop. Now we see it doesn't go back because obviously 10 was the last value. So it come out of the loop. Now it is out of the loop. Now this is printed. The largest value which is 98. So since the last update was 98, so the last thing saved in largest so far was 98. So similarly, to find the smallest value, we could just copy it. And there is a change of obviously the variable, and obviously the change of the variables. But this is not a necessary change. I'll move towards the logic. Smallest. Okay. So obviously now since I declare 22 to first, which will almost be, which is the same case in both of the code. But now the point is it to be less than it, and rest of the code is exactly the same. Yes. So smallest so far is 8. Okay. So it would be first it will be stored 22, then 12, then 8, and then obviously there's no smaller than that. Okay, so we are done with smaller and larger. We can do counting in loop and summation. Okay, we can combine it into one, which is finding the average. How much time we have? We have time. Do we have questions? Good. Let's move forward and let's find the average. Acha, for average, what do we need? We need to know how many objects were there, how many values were there, and then we need to know the sum. Okay? And we are not using the functions. Okay, let's take this list again. I took the list. So let's declare a count. Okay? And let's first write it and then we could come back. For num in list, okay, I want to sum this num. So what can I do? I can say sum is equals to, okay, let's write sum because that's an so there are keywords and you don't have to use the keywords as normal variables. It will give you an error. So sum is a keyword because it is a legitimate function. Yes, it is a function. So you could modify it. Okay? And I just put an extra. So sum is equals to number plus what? I want to add, for example, if I say 22 plus 45, which would be 67. So if I say 22, so 22 is saved into sum, but then how would I add the second one? 45 would then be saved into sum. So what we can do is that we need to have sum, and for that we have to declare sum as well, and we have to set an initial value for it, which is 0. Okay, let me explain it to you. So our sum was 22. Oh, okay. So we have declared the initial sum to be 0. So in our head we have 0. When we came to 22, it was sum is equals to 22 plus 0. So over here, it has its initial value. So it is 0. It is 22 plus 0. Okay. So because it was its initial value. Now it is saved into sum as 22. When it goes back to the next number, which is 45. So it is 45. This becomes 45. But the sum is now updated, which was 22. And then it became 67. So now this would be keep on updating and updating and updating. Okay, good. And we will also print sum, actually let's print sum. Print sum. So we would see that how the sum is updated. Acha. And let's add some description. Let's say iterative sum. Okay, and then this. Oh, you have to put this. Sorry. And now another thing that we need for an average is to see how many values there are in the list. So how could we do that? We could have a count variable, count, and we could also set it to 0, and then we could update it by adding 1 into it every time. So it was 0, it is 0, and it will be 1. Then in the next iteration, it would become, this would be 1, but 1 plus 1 would become 2. And okay, I would go through this as well. Another way to write this is, another very better way to write this is count plus is equals to 1. It means exactly the same. Exactly. It means when you write something like this, it means that whatever operation is over here, you have to use this variable and then this operation and then the letter. Okay? So it is exactly the same. You could use either way. But I obviously have to tell you this. And we could also print out the iterative count. What should I write? Iterative count. And then a comma. And then the count. And then let's print average. And print average. And we know the formula of average is sum over the count. So it is sum over the count. Let's first execute it and then yes, good, excellent. Yeah, so let's see this after small. Okay, so what happened is that we had the sum, which was 0. Okay, then it became, the number was 22. Then we added 0 into it, which was already which was the initial value. Okay, and now see the over here we set the initial value to be the first value, and we could do that same over here, by the way. Okay, but no, we cannot, because it would run from the first value, and if it runs from the first value, it would say 22 plus 22. So we would have an extra first value added into our sum, which is not what we want. So you have to be very picky of your, how do you initialize your variables, especially that are in part of your calculations. So that's your decision, and that's where the decision making starts in coding. Okay, so now we go back. So the number becomes 45, and so our iterative sum was 22. Okay, let's complete the whole code. And then our iterative sum was printed 22, and then the count was 0, and it became 1 because it's still the part of the loop, and it became iterative count to be 1. Then it went back, then it went up to the start of the loop again, because that was the end. And then it said, oh, the list is not ended. So I'm going to move to the second value, which was 45. So now 45, and then there's the value. And then now we have the value which was updated, and the updated value was 22. So it would be 45 plus 22, which is 67. Oh, 67. And now I iterated sound, and now the count variable was 1. Now we added another 1. So it became 2. And now like this, we had all the sum. This was actually the final sum, and the number of values, 7, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, these were 7 values. And then we found the average by sum over the count. So that's how the loop worked. That's how the function which we had, this was the black box of that function. When we were studying function tomorrow or day after tomorrow, in this next or the next section session, we would see what these black boxes and what the functions basically have. Okay. So do we have any questions? Do we understand that how does the loop works? I'm sorry for that. Okay, so there's one last thing, and that's the last thing. Yes. So what if we have to find in a loop that if a certain number exists or not? If I have to find out does 88 is in the list or not, or if there's a list of names, so how do we know that was my name in the list or not? So how would we do that? Okay, let me write what we are doing. We are searching using. So have we studied Boolean variables before? So Boolean variable, there are two, I guess I taught it. So there are only two Boolean variables, which is just true or false, and which is with a capital T and with a capital F. Okay? That's how it is. That's it. That's what are Boolean variables. It is either true or it is either false. So if you're finding my name in the list, so either the name exists or the name does not exist. Okay, so it's either true or it's either false. So for example, I have to, so we have the same list. Let's have the same list, or let's create another list. We can have the same list. I'm basically running out of battery. Acha, list. And we have to see that if the number 8 exists or not. Number 8 not. Okay, let's have number 8. If number, acha, we'll write the code. Let's first go through. Let's first write this value or number, num, n. So for and n are keywords for the statement. Acha. For the list, this is how we're going to iterate to the list, and then we have our colon, and then we would do what? We would say that if our number is equals to, so you understand that what does 1 is equals to means and what does 2 is equals to means. So when we're using the 1 is equals to, it means we are appointing a certain value. We are appointing these both values into count. When there are 2 is equals to, it is a logical operator, which is that is it exactly what number we are going to write? Is it 8? So it is not assigning 8 into the value, but it is asking that is the number 8. So we're not using a single is equals to, we are using 2 is equals to. Okay, then colon, we have colons. And then what? Then what we're saying. So we're going to create a Boolean variable. Let's write Boolean variable. Let's write found. And let's say initially it was false. Let's name it false. And if the number becomes 8, then name found and then convert found to be, and then now we're assigning it. That's why I use a single is equals to. Okay. So number, if 8 is found, then it is true. Okay. Now let's come out of the loop. And let's say if found was is equals to true, print 8 was found. Let's see if it does that. Or we could also print num. So we would, no, it won't. Okay. It is supposed to true. How is that? It should be this. Why is there is an invalid syntax? Acha, let's forget that. Let's not do that. Let's print it out. Let's print found, and let's print number. Let's see. True, and why does it give 10? Oh, this has to be within the loop. Print 9. Achha, let's see where we went wrong, and I could already see it. So what happened was that found was false, and then the number was 8. It wasn't 8 till here, but it became 8 till here. Okay? And it was 8, and then found became true. When found became true, it printed it found. But it should have, oh, yes. Acha, thank God. I wasn't seeing that false 22. Okay. So when the number was 8, it was 22. It didn't improve this. So found was already false. So it printed false 22. And then it went up to 8. And then 8, after 8, this was executed and found became true. And then true, and this is 8. Those other two values are also true because found is now updated to true. But we don't want that. So what should we do? We should say, okay, if, sorry, else if, else if, or just else found is equals to false. Now let's print it out. See? So you have to make it, you have to make sure that there are no loops. You would be thinking that it was a very stupid code to write, that there was no use, but we would be using Boolean variables in the assignments, or you would be using when you would be coding. So this was just an introduction to how could we use Boolean variables. Okay? So you declare a Boolean variable, you just write false and true, and it becomes a Boolean variable. So there is no parentheses and there is no quotations, but you just write it and then there it becomes. If the number was 8, updated to true, else if, keeps it false, or if you don't put this else if, we saw that these two values were also true. And then print the number, which we did on purpose to see that what's happening inside the code. So you could often do that. It could be used, these Boolean variables could be used that, for example, if certain thing is found or some certain thing is there, declare it true, and then do a certain thing. Okay, for example, there's a matrix, and if there's this even number of rows and columns, then declare the Boolean true, and then conduct another code. So yes, that's it. Do we have any questions? Good. So thank you everyone for joining. And this was our session 8. In the next session, we would be studying more loops, while loops and do loops. And yes, goodbye. Take care. Allah Hafiz.